Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here on Saturday, June 1st. Before we get into the leans for the day, we'll quickly recap what happened yesterday. Not the best day in terms of leans. We gave out three major MLB leans there, and we ended up going 1 and 2 with the Astros winning on the money line, but we did lose on the Cubs over as well as the Brewers money line. Brewers money line hurt me in particular as I had money on that, but Chacin ended up walking three guys with the bases loaded in, I believe it was the third or fourth inning, including Archer. So definitely not what I like to see there, but the Astros ended up salvaging whatever we had as they ended up pulling out a come-from-behind win to win yesterday. But with that being said, we actually have a decent-sized card here as we have an NHL Stanley Cup game, and we also have the Champions League final coming up, and then we have an MLB card. So I'll start out with the game everyone wants to talk about, which is the NHL Stanley Cup matchup, as it will be Game 3 between the Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues. First game in St. Louis. St. Louis opened up as big at minus 122. Now they're down to roughly minus 115. Total's been staying steadily at 5 with heavy juice towards the over. In terms of this game, I still lean to the over 5. I know that the juice is high, but at the same point, 5 is pretty much, in today's NHL, almost a guaranteed push. And I think that you would be looking at a nice over there. And I'd also lean to the Bruins there. Sundqvist is suspended for this game after his alleged cheap shot, which ended up injuring a Bruins player. But overall, I thought the Bruins played pretty well. Marchand made a couple of mistakes defensively, which led to some odd man rushes. But St. Louis ended up needing overtime in order to win. And I think the Bruins are still the better team. So I personally lean to the Bruins there on the money line. I'd also lean to the over 5 in that one. Now moving on to some rare soccer coverage on the show. You have the Tottenham Hotspur versus Liverpool FC in the Champions League final. In terms of this game, I don't really have a thought on the side. I would lean to Liverpool, assuming that Salah is finally back. But Harry Kane's also back for Tottenham, and Tottenham had both teams had thrilling ways in order to even get here in the first place, with remarkable come-from-behind wins in their respective semifinal matchups against Ajax as well as Barcelona. But in terms of this game, I'd lean to the over 2.5. These teams have seen each other multiple times because they're both in the Prem, so they have seen each other numerous times during the season. And I definitely think that with Kane and Salah back, I'd have to lean to the over 2.5, including Son, who's also in the lineup. I just think there's too many weapons here. I would not be surprised both teams play a relatively offensive battle, so I think that the over 2.5 is a solid deal. So I think this game will end up somewhere in the realm of 2-1, so I would lean to the over 2.5 there. Moving on, I got into the baseball leans here. I'm going to skip the games that don't have any lines right now. So I'm going to skip the Twins game. I'm going to skip the Yankees game. And I will also skip the Marlins game, as none of those lines have been posted at the time of recording. But we'll start out with the Indians and the White Sox. I lean to the Indians here with Rodriguez against Nova. I know that the Indians have looked awful over the weekend. Bauer got roughed up. But at minus 110 here, I still think they're a better team than the White Sox, and I think that Nova has struggled a decent amount this season. Rodriguez hasn't been great, but I definitely still think the Indians are the better team. So I would lean to the Indians on the money line, and I'd also lean to the over 10.5 there, as I think both pitchers will struggle. Now, one of my favorite leans for the day is I will lean to the over 9.5 between the Orioles and the Giants, with Anderson and Hess on the mound. This game was very entertaining early on yesterday, as they generated roughly 11 runs in the first inning for one of the easiest over cashes that you've ever had if you ended up having money on it. But Hess is not great. Anderson's still young, not the greatest pitcher by any means. And I think that 9.5 is too low of a total, especially with the team's bullpens. I would lean to the over 9.5. I think that both these teams could easily score 5 in Camden Yards, and I expect both pitchers to struggle again in this one. Moving on, you have the Brewers versus the Pirates, with Kingham versus Woodruff. I'd lean to the over 9 here. Woodruff's been solid this season. Kingham's been okay. But both these lineups have looked pretty good recently, so I'd lean to the over 9 there. Moving on, you have the Royals versus the Rangers with Lynn versus Bailey. Lean to the Rangers here. Homer Bailey day. Not anything more really needs to be said, as Homer Bailey's been one of the worst pitchers in baseball for the last couple of seasons. Lynn's been pretty good. He has looked decent his last couple of starts, and I think that the Rangers will do a good job at Arlington of getting to Bailey, so I'd lean to the Rangers there at roughly minus 158. Moving on, you have the Nationals and the Reds. I'd lean to the over 10 here with Rourke versus Fetty. Not a fan of either pitcher. Reds offense got to Corbin quickly yesterday. I think that they will continue to do well in Great American, and I'd lean to the over 10 there, which is available at minus 110 at Bovada. Moving on, you have the Tigers versus the Braves with Norris versus Soroka. I lean to the over 9 there. Soroka's been great this year. Norris has been okay, but I don't see much value on the Braves. Are roughly minus 250, so I personally lean to the over on that one. Moving on, you have Heaney versus Malone with the Angels and the Mariners. I lean to the Angels there. Angels have looked good over the last couple of games. Heaney's been okay this season after making a season debut in his last start, and Malone is nothing to write home about, so I'd personally lean to the Angels in the money line there at roughly minus 110. Moving on, you have the Cubs versus the Cardinals. I'd lean to the Cubs here. I just don't think Flaherty should be a minus 135 favorite. Quintana's good enough that he could have a quality start, and I still think the Cubs lineup's better than the Cardinals, so I'd lean to the Cubs money line at plus price on that one. Moving on, you have Stroman versus Gray in the Blue Jays and Rockies game. Lean to the over 11 here. Stroman's been solid this season. Gray's been okay, but both these lineups did look decent yesterday. Arenado's still on a tear. Blackman's look pretty good. I still think that this line is too low, especially in Coors Field. Lean to the over 11 there. Moving on, you have the Astros and the A's. Totals at 7.5. Money's coming on Oakland. Houston's currently a minus 147 favorite, minus 150, give or take. Still lean to Houston. No way I'm going against Verlander here. Anderson's been pretty solid this season, but the Astros are the better team. They have the better bullpen, and Verlander on the mound is a treat just for anybody who wants to bet the Astros on any given opportunity. So I would personally lean to the Astros there. Moving on, you have the Mets and the Diamondbacks. Lean to the Diamondbacks here. Nice win by the Mets yesterday, coming from behind. But DeGrom's definitely had a down year. Greinke's been very solid, especially at home. And I would lean to the Diamondbacks to bounce back quite nicely against the Mets here. So I'd lean to the Diamondbacks, money line roughly minus 105 on Bookmaker. Moving on, you have the Dodgers versus the Phillies. Dodgers are currently a minus 195 with Kershaw on the mound versus Irvin. Total's been bet up from 8 to 8.5. Still lean to Kershaw. I don't think it really matters what the money line is. I would just simply take Kershaw because he is an absolute beast, and I would not go against him on any given outing. But with that being said, the leans for the main matchups, lean to the over in the soccer match, over 2.5. I'd lean to the Bruins money line at roughly plus 100, give or take. I'd lean there. And I'd also lean to the over in the Orioles game in that one. And I'd also lean to the Angels on the money line there. But before we conclude today's video, just a quick reminder of our sponsor at PointsBet. Online New Jersey Sportsbook has some great deals, up to 2 risk-free bets of up to $1,000. So if you end up losing any of your bets, you end up getting your money back, which is definitely a great promo that the book has been using. Also, an NBA Finals and a Stanley Cup deal. NBA Finals, if the team you bet on is up after 3 quarters, you win. Don't have to worry about sweating out the fourth. And in the NHL Stanley Cup, if the team you bet on is up by 2 goals at any point, you win and don't have to worry about sweating out a potential choke job by the team you bet on. But other than that, I do have a tennis play posted in the tennis selections video, so I'd recommend checking that out. With that being said, that'll do it for this installment of Scott Selections here for Saturday, June 1st. And good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.